Hey guys, what it is your girl Cadillac. Yes, I'm Cadillac Dixon. I'm the Drama Life Prison Wife. I'm the legally blind artist that is rapping and painting for justice. Hoping, girl, to see justice before all face to black. Yes, it's your girl Cadillac. Anyways, I'm here in front of my laptop and I am about to read the transcript to you. Now, I am gonna go back. This is so crazy. I'm starting, girl, but you know, I work backwards. There's just some about me. But because we're on the grave mistakes that you make when you take a conviction at face and then value, that doesn't even rhyme. But girl, when you take a conviction at face value, okay, so I am talking about the assembly line of a case and how each step Marchello's case was tainted. So we're on the first step, which is the arresting officers. We're showing how, because the wrongful convictions most times starts with wrongful arrests, and so did Marchello's. So I am going to read the officers, because not only did the officer that wrote the report, not only did he falsify the documents, he changed the scene of the alleged crime to make it more aligned with Marchello being at the place that they claim he robbed these two guys from. He changed that. They claimed it's too many different things. You have to go through the playlist. But not only did he do all of those things, but then it was two other officers, basically, and they all came and testified under oath on the witness stand and gave false information, and they conflicted. So rather than me just tell you how, I tell you the story of the arresting officer in another case being accused with 4 other officers of over-outing somebody. They claim, okay, that's a long story. So just, you got to watch the playlist, girl. You got to catch up to date so you can understand, because I can't understand, like, explaining the air video, girl. We'll never get the video started or going. But basically, he was accused in over-outing somebody. He fabricated that, and then they were saying that he and the other 4 officers all had different stories. It was very disharmonious, their testimonies, right? And it's the same in Marchello Jackson's case. So let's listen to the testimonies of the officers. 3 upstanding, law-abiding, law-defending officers. Yes, okay. The Circuit Court, 9th Judicial Circuit Criminal Justice Division in and for Orange County District 19. The state of Florida versus Marchello Jackson. The whole state, girl. Okay. So Marchello's the defendant. Trying to move it down. Don't move so fast. Okay, so the officer's testimony starts on page 86 of the transcripts. Girl, why won't that, like, move that down? Okay, there we go. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the camera and then I'm trying to look at the screen to read. Girl, my head hurt. I'm working all day. The skeleton crew, nobody but your girl doing everything. And now I'm hurting. My little herniated disc giving me a headache. Come on. I'm just trying to scroll to where it starts, okay? So I'm trying to scroll to page 86. Okay, here we are. Yes, 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 yes. So I'm only going to use the last names because I do not want to. You ain't got to go look these folks up and this and that. Like I said, I am not taking revenge on them. I just need Marchello home. All right. Okay, this is, they just came back from a recess. Girl, I gotta get myself, like, comfortable. Okay, so they're just coming back from a recess. This was April the 9th, 2002. This is when trial date was. And we're about to come up to 21 years since trial. About to be 21 years, girl. 21 years ago, they broke my darn heart in pieces. Okay, court deputy, everyone rise, please. Court will come in order. The court, please bring in the jury. Court deputy, everyone, please rise. The jury is entering. The court. All right, Ms Brennan. Okay, this was basically, I just said I was going to use the last names. Okay, all right, Ms. Brennan, call your next witness. So the state's witness would like to call Officer Rivera. Whereupon Officer Rivera was called as a witness and having first been duly sworn by the clerk, was examined and testified as follows. Ms. Brennan. Brennan is the state attorney. Really, I think she was the assistant state attorney back then. Okay. Would you state your name, please? Officer Rivera. Where do you work? I work for OPD. They really say the full thing, but I'm trying not to incriminate nothing, whatever. Okay. What is your job with them? Police officer. I'm sorry? Police officer. What is your duties? As far as like what? As far as like protecting? Yes. What's your day-to-day duties as a police officer? I patrol. How long have you worked there? A year and 6 months. God dog, he was just new. A year and 6 months. Do you have any prior law enforcement? I was military police in the Army. For how long? For 5 years. Are you assigned to any particular area to patrol? I'm with the Central Sector. And what part of town is that? It's basically just west of downtown. West of downtown to where? I'm sorry? It's basically from Tampa, which is the street. I'd say Carter, I'm sorry, to Gore Street and all the way to Garland. Were you on duty on August 12th of last year, which was 2012? Yes, ma'am. And is that the same area you were assigned to that time? Yes. And what shift were you on that day? Mid shift, which is like from 9:15 p.m. to 5:30 in the morning. And were you, when you say you were a patrol officer, is that in a car? Yes, ma'am. And do you work with anybody? This is the first officer. I work with Officer Sauvage. You ride in the ride. Oh, girl, that didn't make no sense. That's because I can't read. I could read, girl, but, you know, it hurt my head to read like that. Let's get up off the floor. My eyes already hurt, too. Where we at? Okay, you two ride in the ride. You two ride in the car together. Okay, that didn't make sense, but I did read that correctly. That night you were, which it has a question mark there. Did you have an occasion on that night to come into contact with the defendant, Marchello Jackson? Yes, ma'am. And how did that come about? We were traveling northbound on Westmoreland, and we observed the vehicle rolling the stop sign. The vehicle then proceeded south at a high rate of speed, at which time we made a U-turn. We tried to get with the vehicle. The vehicle tried to elude us by cutting through. Then it got slashes like for spaces, double dashes. It's kind of like a park. It's a dirt road, at which time we got to the vehicle. Then some more slashes or space. Question. Then she says, let me stop you there. Are you in a marked car? Yes, ma'am. Did you put your sirens or lights on at any point by the time we got behind the vehicle? Okay. And where did the vehicle run the stop sign at? It was on Livingston and Westmoreland. Is that what you were attempting to stop it for? Yes, ma'am. You got behind the vehicle, and did it ever stop? Finally, that's the answer. Finally, the vehicle stopped at the end of Beech culdasac, a dead end. Yes, ma'am. And what happened when it stopped? By the time we got to the vehicle, we observed both doors were open, and I observed the defendant and another black male. Now, you know how they keep referring to him, another black male. I told y'all this man is high freaking darn yellow, like Tom Joyner or Drake. But they just keep, referring to. I would have thought Officer Rivera would have thought he might have been another Hispanic male. But girl, okay. I observed the defendant and another black male running southbound towards Robinson. And what did you do? At that time, I exited my vehicle and pursued the subjects. Now, you see that. They say Marchello and the cousin ran. It's going to be proven that he did not run, but he's testifying that he did. At the time, I exited my vehicle and pursued the subjects. And where did you pursue them to? There was a fence. There was a fence. At that time, I lost contact for a brief second. And at that time, Officer Sivels, which is the woman that I told y'all how she cut him off on the next street, was just driving by. And then it happened as they were crossing the street. I'm confused. Where are you going? Okay, I was, and then space. When you say there was a fence, that's a question mark after it. I was going south on Robinson where there's a blank. There's a cul-de-sac. There's train tracks, and there's Robinson Street. Now, are you running on the roadway the whole time? I'm running on the roadway, and then I jump between it's kind of like on the railroad tracks. That's where I jumped in order to, from the street onto Robinson, and have to cross over the railroad tracks. You have to cross over the railroad tracks. Yes, ma'am. Now you're following the two men, and you saw them get out the car. Yes, ma'am. When did you see Officer Sivels? Is that another officer? Yes, ma'am. Where did you see her at? She was, as soon as we put the call out, as I'm running behind, I saw her pull in on Robinson. She was going on Robinson and she saw the suspects just running. Now, all of this, hearing how he's explaining this, how they doing that much running? When I just showed y'all in that live how close the dead end cul-de-sac the car stopped and how close. Girl, I wonder, can I measure it? I literally can go back to that cul-de-sac and measure from there to where they stopped Marchello at and see, can you do this much goddamn running? You probably can't even take that many steps. Okay, across the street, she confronted the guy and told him to stop right there. And that's when the defendants kind of walked and their suspects didn't stop. He just kept on running. The other suspect didn't stop. He just kept on running. And where were you when you saw her car stop the defendant? As I was right there, I was like on the railroad tracks. I was just from there to the door. And was he stopped there on Robinson then? He was just walking towards her at the time. I could make contact out there. Okay, let me reread that because I'm kind of messing up reading, girl. Because context is going to matter. He was just walking towards her at the time that I could make contact out there. I'm sorry. He was walking towards the officer. Towards the officer? Yes. And was the other person running still? By that time, I couldn't see him. He had already jumped the fence. Were you still trying to? I was trying to get the other person. Did you pass the defendant to Officer Sivels? Yeah. I told him just sit there, down over there, and stay with him. I'm going. How is he saying him? Because his answer says, I told him just to sit down over there and stay with him. Okay. But Officer Sivels is a woman. I'm going to try to get the other person. How far away was the defendant stopped from the car? I'd say about 150 feet. And how quickly was he stopped from the car? I'd say it's a matter of seconds tops, 1 minute. Did you, once, and then did you eventually lose complete sight of the other individual? Yes, ma'am. Ever apprehend him? No. We tried. We made a perimeter. We called the Orange County helicopter. We never found him. With the help of K9, we couldn't find him. What was the defendant like? He was very nervous. He was sweating profusely. He was just very sweaty. Were you there when did you have any dealings with the victims, Mr. Wintle and Mr. Nevins? No. To this time, did you talk to them? To this time, all I'm thinking is I got two suspects that they just bailed out of the car and I don't know what's going on. By the time we got him, the other officers stay with him. And by the time I'm running back to try to get the other officers, that's when they came through on the radio. This is an armed kidnapping and a carjacking. At that time, that's what I knew. What we were really dealing with. When you were, and then space, when I was still trying to get the other officer, the other suspect. When I was still trying to get the other officer, the other suspect. Did you space? Okay, from here on, instead of saying space, I'm just going to pause briefly so you know that's a space. Did you at any time question Mr. Wintle or Nevins? Negative. Or was that left to the other officers? Negative. Officer Savage took care of the victims. I bet he did. That's the one. That's the freaking one. Okay, I bet he took care of them. And she asked, wow. He says negative. Did you at any time question Wintle and Nevins? They should have been questioned because they was in that goddamn car. Negative. Or was that left to the other officer? Negative. Officer Savage took care of the victims. Do you see the defendant in the courtroom today? Yes. Can you point him out and describe what he's wearing, please? He's wearing the brown sports jacket, white shirt. Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has just identified the defendant. The court, Mr. Sims, any objection? So the court is the judge. The judge said, Mr. Sims, any objection? That was Marchello's public defender. Mr. Sims answered, no, sir. The record will so reflect. I have no further questions at this time. That was Ms. Brennan. She had no more questions. Sorry, my nose. I would have paused that. I know that's, just excuse me, guys. Okay, Mr. Sims, this is cross-examination. This is Marchello's public defender coming back. Good morning still. How are you, officer? Good morning. Pretty good, sir. You patrol that area from 9 to 5:30 that you just described till 5:30 in the morning, right? Yes, sir. What you're looking for is things like traffic infractions, right? Yes, sir. That can lead to bigger arrests for, it says, let's say substances. I don't know if YouTube is friendly with that term. For substances, violent crimes, or anything of that nature. It's part of the job. Yes, sir. That area, you're patrolling very carefully and keeping your eyes open because it is a high substance area, correct? Yes, sir. In this case now, were you driving? No, sir. Let's say this is Westmoreland. Okay. And I don't know. I guess we're facing north from here. Let me look. Let's just say for the purposes of this case, which we're not facing north, but for the purposes of this case, this is north on Westmoreland. That's where you're traveling. Yes, sir. And as you're traveling, Livingston cuts right in here, correct? Yes, sir. So to your left, you see what you call a rolling stop sign. I'm sorry, a rolling stop. This car rolled through. Yes, sir. You didn't have any other idea what was going on with that car? No, sir. Going kind of slow, but it rolled through the stop sign. Yes, sir. Which is a traffic infraction. Yes, sir. You make a U-turn as quick as you can. Yes, sir. So now you're heading southbound behind him. Yes. And you see Well, right after you make a U-turn, you see this car speed up, right? Yes, sir. It's really only a very short distance till you hit the 300 block of Westmoreland and North Westmoreland. Yes, sir. Oh, then he says, right? Yes, sir. It's approximately there that the car peels off in dirt and cuts through, right? Yes, sir. Has to go through, I believe it's a brown or a pink apartment building, right? I have to see. Wait, I'm sorry. I have to have yes or no's. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Mr. Sims. This is, and I will slow down. I'm sorry, Madam Reporter. Mr. Sims. This is him talking, I believe. Yeah, this is him talking. There's been a dirt road that is really someone's backyard, correct? Yes, sir. That has since got a new pylons. I don't know what that means. Pylons on somebody. Pylon, Pylons. That has since got new pylons on, so somebody can't do this. But back then, it could be negotiated by a vehicle, right? Yes, sir. The vehicle. And you're following. This vehicle then cuts through to other apartment buildings. And the one on the south is green and about 8 units, right? I think so, sir. When you get past that, this car had made a right turn onto Beech. Correct? Correct. Yes, sir. And by the time you turn, the doors are open and the 2 occupants of the front seat are out. Right? Yes, sir. And the reason they stopped is what happens to Beech is it makes a right turn past the apartment complex and a couple of houses, and there's a big circle and it's a dead end, right? Yes, sir. And after the circle, there is a little walkway that goes over some flat gray rocks. Yes, sir. That they have out next to the railroad track, right? Yes, sir. So really at the end of Beech Street, right there, right here where the jury box is, there's a big light over here to the right, right? Yes, sir. You had pretty good lighting there at the right. Yes, sir. So to the left is a big switching station to the railroad, right? Big green box. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The court. Yes, you need to answer yes or no because we have a court reporter that's taking these things down. I'm sure that they've told you about this. You know, when you went to training at the police academy. But we don't want uh-huhs and We want yes or no's. The witness. I'm sorry, Your Honor. No problem. Mr. Sims. So that's a yes. That there's that big green switching box that says RRP man on it in spray paint, right? Yes, sir. There's also, because there's that walkway that has those 2 metal rails, they also have 2 of the railroad crossing signs right there. So people walking across the railroad won't not realize the train is coming through, right? Yes, sir. So then there's the tracks. There's just little more rocks, and then you're out onto West Robinson itself, correct? Yes, sir. Now, the spot that you saw my client, Marchello Jackson, actually walking up to the officer was probably shorter than that 100 feet away, wasn't it? Not running distance, girl. You could run 100 feet with a high, like chasing on foot like that. It was just walking across West Robinson a little bit to the east, correct? Yes, sir. And then there's that officer, and he starts walking towards her, and you say, sit down. And he sits down on the side of the street, right? Yes, sir. This is Marchello. So from where he was, you could look right over less than 100 feet away and see the car and all that was going on, right? No, sir. Because at the time, there's this fence. And I'll say in the northeast corner of the intersection where the culdasac is, there's a house and there's a fence. So he kind of walked towards the east. So when I lost sight of him, that's when Wendy Officer, oh shit, didn't mean to say her fucking name. Oh, didn't mean to say that. That's when Officer Sivels, maybe I'll go back and edit that out. I'm so sorry, y'all. That's when Officer Sivels, so he was walking next to that fence, and he had to cross Robinson to sit down there on the other side of Robinson. It's a question. On the other side. Still within 100 feet though, right? Yes, sir. And one of the things that you've noted in your year and a half of working that section and whatnot is oftentimes people that aren't familiar with the area will have someone get in the car with someone to take them to find where substances are, correct? Answer, that happens. Yes, sir. Question, yes. You've arrested people for that. Answer, yes, sir. I have nothing further. Thank you. The court. Anything further, Ms. Brennan? Ms. Brennan, yes. Redirect examination. What time was this that you observed the car run the stop sign? It was around, let me check my notes, around 11:55 p.m., 23:55 hours. Okay. I just lost my spot. Girl. Everything going to bed. My hands going to bed. My feet going to bed. But I'm finna finish this. What page was I on? It went down too far. Because it stopped scrolling. I want to at least finish this first officers. My hand. Okay, cross examination. I read that. Now we at re-examination. Okay, redirect examination by Ms. Brennan. What time was this that you observed the car run the stop sign? It was around, let me check my notes. Why won't it scroll no more? I don't want to lose this page again. Okay. $11:55, 23:55 hours. Okay, were there any other cars in the area when you all were following this car? Negative, ma'am. No. And how about when you were running after the defendant and seated when the defendant is with Officer Sivels? Is there any other? I didn't observe anybody else. No, no one else. No, ma'am. The defense just insinuated about substances. Was there any evidence of substances being involved in this at all? Negative, ma'am. No. Did you find any in the car? No, ma'am. Find any on the victims? No, ma'am. Find any on the defendant? No, ma'am. Anything at all? No, ma'am. Nothing further. Nothing, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Witness excused. Call your next witness. The state would like to call Officer Sauvage, whereupon Officer Sauvage was called as a witness and, having first been duly sworn by the clerk, was examined and testified as follows. Direct examination by Ms Brennan. Would you state your name? Now remember, each one is in the courtroom at a separate time, so they don't know what the last person just said. Officer Sauvage. And where do you... I've been calling you Sauvage. Where do you work? OPD. How long have you worked there? 2.5 years. What's your job with them? Patrol officer. You work with Officer Rivera that just left? Yes, I do. You're assigned to the same area of town? Yes, we are. On the same squad? On the same squad. Were you on duty August 12th of last year? Yes, I was. And what shift were you working? That mid shift. And who were you with? I was riding in the command unit with Officer Rivera. I was driving. He was the passenger. And did you have occasion to have contact with the victim, Mr. Wintle and Mr. Nevins, on that night? Yes, I did. And did you have contact with the defendant, Marchello Jackson, on that night? Yes, I did. And how did your contact with them come about? We were driving northbound on Westmoreland, approaching Livingston Street, when I saw a black 98 Ford 2-door fail to come to a complete stop at a stop sign. They were actually traveling rather fast. Dang, that's different. The other officer just said they were going rather slow, but still wrote the stop sign. He says they're going rather fast. Turned onto Westmoreland, driving straight at me in the opposite lane. I pulled over to turn back around. They drove past us at a high rate of speed. What did you do then? I got behind them, and as I caught up, they made a left down like a dirt cut-through road to an adjoining dead-end street. Any other cars in the area? No. What happened then when they were on the dead-end street? As we came around the corner, the car was stopped at the dead end, and there were 2 individuals exiting the vehicle from the driver's and the passenger side. What did you do? At the time, I stayed with the vehicle. Officer Rivera exited from the passenger side and chased after them. And what did you do? At that time, 2 individuals had crawled out from the back seat. And who were they? And who were they? One was the owner of the vehicle and the other was his friend. Who? Nevins and I believe Wintle. Okay, and what did you do when they crawled out from the back seat? At first, I had no idea, what the situation was. I had them at G point, told them to show their hands. They got out the car, were hugging each other, and were pretty upset. And they put their hands up. And at the time they stated, we've been robbed. We've been robbed. And then they put their hands back down. What did you do? I went up to them and checked them for weapons, asked for identification, ascertained that they were, and he was the owner of the vehicle. Okay, did you find any weapons on them? No, I did not. Your car, you were in a marked car. Yes, I was. Did you put those sirens and lights on at some point? Yes. I had my overhead lights on. I never had a chance to put the sirens on by the time I caught up. What was the victim's demeanor like? They were very upset. After you asked, got their identification ascertained? What happened? What happened then? At the point, I had several other units that had come on the scene. I believe another officer had seen Officer Rivera running after these same individuals who had exited from the passenger side of the vehicle. Did you see that? The man you saw exit from the passenger side, did you see him ever again? From the time he exited? No, not till later. That's what I'm asking. Did you see him ever again? Oh, yes. When did you see him again? Approximately about 20 minutes later. Where did you see him at? Across the street, about 2 blocks, a block and a half away where they had found him. Thought he was across the street. Now he is across the street, 2 blocks, a block and a half away from where they found him. He's adding that distance. Rivera said he was right across that street. Officer Rivera and Officer Sivels, do you see the person today here in the courtroom? Yes, I do. Would you point him out and describe what he's wearing, please? He's sitting right there at the table wearing a suit and a white shirt. Ms. Brennan, Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant. Mr. Sims, no objection, sir. The record will so reflect. And were you with, this is Ms. Brennan, by Ms. Brennan. And were you with the victims when they made their identification? No, I don't believe I was. Do you know who was? No, I can't recall. Were they taken somewhere or? Yes, they were. They weren't taken nowhere. They never left that culdasac. Or brought back to you? No, they were taken to the defendants. Did the defendant have any property on him? Yes, he did. What did he have on him? 3 $20 bills. Had Mr. Wintle and Mr. Nevins told you what was taken from them prior to these 3 $20 bills being found on the defendant? Yes, they did. And who had told you that? There was a wallet that was laying on the floorboard, the court. The question was, who had told you that? The witness, oh, I'm sorry. I believe it was Nevins. Nevins is one of the alleged victims. Did you see their wallets? Just one. And where did you see it? There was one that was laying near the passenger side. What did you do with it? Picked it up, checked it for identification. And who? Do you remember whose wallet it was? Yes, Nevin's. Is that when you were still ascertaining what had happened to these two individuals and who they were? Yes. How far away is where the car stopped from the club? Approximately 2 blocks. And how far away would that be? 2 blocks. Less than maybe an eighth of a mile. And what time was it that the car was stopped? That was approximately midnight. Is the club in Orange County, Florida? Yes, it is. Is the area from the club in Beech Street where the car was stopped, is that all in Orange County, Florida? Yes, it is. I'm going to show you, after I show defense, State's Exhibit 3, and ask you if you recognize this document. B, for identification. Yes, I do. And how do you recognize it? It was a prior booking photo of the defendant. Prior, just, and then the answer, okay, the question says prior. Answer says just, and then the question says, taken that day? Because Marchello had no priors. They put a picture in exhibit, State's exhibit, saying it was a prior arrest photo, and Marchello had no priors. Okay, the court. Let's hold on a minute. Let me have the lawyers approach the bench. Whereupon the counsel approaches the bench and conferred with the court out of hearing of the jury as follows. The court. You know the question that, okay, you know that question is like giving someone TNT. I can't believe that you're asking it. You know that he has been unresponsive to the questions that you've asked him this far. So you need to lead him a little bit, because otherwise you're going to get yourself in trouble. Ms. Brennan. It has a date of 8/13 on it. The court. I don't care. It's the way that it's being asked and the way that it's being answered can lead to problems. So be careful of how you're doing this. Whereupon the bench conference was concluded. Ms. Brennan. Officer Sauvage. Is that the booking photo from August the 13th, 2001 of the defendant? Yes, that's correct. And is that what he looked like on that evening? Yes. And obviously, the early morning hours of 8/13. Yes, that's correct, Your Honor. This, I'd like to move into evidence State Exhibit B for identification. Any objection? No objection. All right. It'll be admitted. State Exhibit B will come in as State number 4. State's number 4, whereupon State's Exhibit number 4 was marked and received into evidence. Ms. Brennan, her question. Was there any evidence of substances being involved in this at all? No. Did you find any in the car or on the victims? No. Defendant? Anybody at all? No. No further questions. Cross-examination. Good morning, officer. How are you? Fine, sir. I want to clear something up right now. I'm looking at a state exhibit. It's a photo of Marchello Jackson, correct? Correct. That's the way he looked the night he was arrested for this crime. That is correct. This was actually taken on the morning of August the 13th, correct? That is correct, of 2001. You mentioned that that's a prior booking photo, in fact. There are no prior booking photos, are there? I couldn't tell you. Question, of Marchello Jackson. You've never seen him before. Answer, no. Ever known him to be arrested ever before in his life? No. So this is a prior? This was taken that day. That's correct. Thank you. Now, if you catch someone going to buy substances before they bought it, you sometimes don't find the substances, right? That's correct. Because they've not been purchased, right? Correct. And you said that when you came up on these victims, they weren't sure what you had, right? That's correct. You did what OPD is supposed to and is trained to respond, since they're crawling out the back of the seat. That's your words, right? Correct. They're crawling out because it's a two-door vehicle. That Ford Escort, right? Yes, it's a two-door. So they had to kind of bend down and get out of the back seat, correct? Yes. They're crawling out and you get a G on them because you don't know who they are, correct? And immediately they say, no, we're the victims, chase them, correct? At that point, they weren't saying anything. They weren't saying anything. You just had a G on them, correct? Your partner went after the two folks that had left, right? Yes. You stayed and got their identification to determine who they were, correct? One of the identification that you used was found on the floorboard, correct? Yes. And that was the wallet. That identification was inside a wallet. It was Mr. Nevin's wallet, right? Yes, sir. Inside the car. Yes, sir. Mr. Sims, nothing further. Thank you. The court. Any further questions, Madam Prosecutor? No. All right. Thank you all. You can step down. The witness. Thank you. The court. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead for recess and go to lunch, and we'll reconvene at 1:30. The court deputy will give you directions on where to reconvene. Let me have the lawyers approach the bench, and you all are free to go. Court deputy, everyone, please rise. The jury, members of the jury, please follow me. Whereupon the jury was excused from the courtroom. The court. Actually, we could just wait, then we could just talk. I just wanted to get a scheduling feel for where we're going on this. Court deputy, you may be seated. How many more witnesses? I have one more witness, another officer. So it should be just as short then as them, the court. How many witnesses do you plan to call, Mr. Sims, if any? Wouldn't be more than one. Ms. Brennan, did you make a representation to my secretary that you weren't going to be available this week? That you were going to be down in Kissimmee trying the Huggins case? I did. I'm asking you that. I think I did, Judge, because I was scheduled to do that one. When too many things got on my schedule, I backed off of the Huggins case. Okay, all right. We'll be in recess to 1:30, whereupon at 12 noon, court was in recess to reconvene at 1:30 the same day. Afternoon session. So now this is the last deputy. Hopefully I can get through this because this is going to take forever to upload off my sister's phone. Okay, at 1:35 p.m., court will come to order the court. All right, everybody, ready to go. Ms. Brennan, yes, Your Honor. The court, all right. Bring in the jury. Court deputy, everyone, please rise. Jury is entering. Whereupon the jury entered the courtroom. All right. Let the record reflect the presence of the jury and the defendant counsel for both parties. Ms. Brennan, you may proceed. Ms. Brennan, the state will call Officer Sivels. I've been mispronouncing every officer's name badly, whereupon Officer Sivels was called as a witness, and having first been duly sworn by the clerk and was examined and testified as followed. Direct examination. Would you state your name for us, Officer Sivels? Officer Sivels, where do you work? OPD. What is your title? What is your job? What is your job there with them? Patrol officer, nights? What part of the city are you assigned to? That's called Central. Anywhere from Orange Avenue to Tampa to Colonial and south to Grant Ave, Village Square. Are you on the same squad as Officer Rivera and Officer Sauvage? I am. Were you on duty August 12th of last year, 2001? Yes, I was. Did you have an occasion to have contact with the defendant on that day? I did. Okay, can you explain to the jury how your contact with him came about? I was on patrol on Robinson. I was driving west on Robinson. I saw two individuals running across the street and I'm sorry, can you describe the individuals? I just know that one was much taller than the other, black males. I can't give any specific direction. I mean directions because based on the circumstances, I didn't know. I wasn't looking for anybody in particular. Had anything gone over your radio on dispatch from any other officer about anything that had occurred? No. So you were merely just driving on patrol and you see these two individuals running where? Correct. They were running south across Robinson. Looks like I guess that would be across the railroad tracks, it seems, across Robinson. Was there any other persons in the area? I'm not really sure, but I think out of the peripheral, I might have seen Officer Rivera. A distance behind, running behind the two individuals. But I know I saw them running, and I thought it was unusual. That they were running. Anyone else besides, any people out there walking on the street? Yeah, there were. Not a lot of people, maybe one or two. What did you do when you saw them running? I saw them running and I stopped by patrol car and said, hey, I got out the car. I stopped. At the same time I stopped the patrol car, I got out and I said, hey. Why did you get out and yell, hey? Because, like I said, I think out the peripheral, I saw Officer Rivera, some distance behind. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that something was not right. I just stopped my patrol car and yelled at them. And at the same time, I got out the car. What happened when you yelled, hey? One of the individuals, I believe it was the taller individual, stopped. They both stopped and looked at me. And they looked at me. And then one individual, who I didn't get a good description of, kept running. The taller individual stopped. And then at the same time, Officer Rivera came running up. And did you detain the individual at the time? Based upon Officer Rivera's request, I did. Ms. Brennan, I don't really have any other questions. Cross-examination. Mr. Sims, yes, sir, thank you. Cross-examination. Good afternoon, officer. Good afternoon. When you were hollering stop, both individuals stopped, and then the shorter one kept going, correct? Correct. Then the shorter one walked to you. He didn't actually walk to me. I'm sorry. Then the taller one walked to you. He didn't actually walk to me. He stopped in the middle of the road because that's where it happened. Did you direct him over and have him sit on the curb there on Robinson? Officer Rivera, like I said, came running up at the same time. And it was almost like an instance we all knew something was up, or I knew something was up. And he directed him to have a seat on the curb. And he did that. He did. Thank you. No other questions. Any other questions? No, Your Honor. Ms. Brennan is saying, no, Your Honor. The court. All right, then. Thank you. Any further witnesses? Your Honor, at this time, the state of Florida rests its case. Approach the bench. Whereupon the counsel approached the bench and conferred with the court out of the hearing of the jury as follows. Any motions? Mr. Sims, yes, sir. We make a motion for direct verdict, judgment of acquittal, specifically as to count 3 and 4 being redundant, double jeopardy, and that is this car. There is one car. That car had someone in the driver's seat, but it also had the actual owner in the passenger seat. Only one car was taken. There's an allegation of threat. That would be double jeopardy, violation to convict my client, or even the possibility of convicting my client for carjacking in 2 different counts. The court, okay, let's go ahead and have the jury go back so we could have some other arguments on this. Whereupon the bench conference was concluded. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to address a few legal matters, and at this point in time, so I'm going to ask that you go back into the jury room. Well, we'll be with you quick as we can. Whereupon the jury was excused from the courtroom. You may be seated. Okay, I could keep going, but this is getting really long. Okay, so those were the testimonies of the 3 officers. I believe that in the part where I think that's in the concluding statements, because they present all the witnesses, they go back and forth with each witness. And then I think in the closing statements is where he says that it was proven that Marchello did not run. It is looking like Officer Rivera tried to create some distance so it could look like he ran, but he created maybe a reasonable amount of distance. Officer Sauvage said it was blocks. It was like 2 blocks. So that's creating a large amount of distance. Then Officer Sivels is seeming like she kind of in the middle, like, oh, he ran, but he didn't run. But if you look at this cul-de-sac, there's no way from where the car was stopped to where they made Marchello sit on the ground. That was not running. He didn't run. He was directed to sit down, and he walked up to her and sat down on the ground right there. And they all said that they proceeded to, the other two proceeded to try to catch the other two, I'm sorry, the other one, the driver, but they did not catch them. They didn't catch him. We know that that's a lie, that they caught him, but that's what they said. They did not catch them. So they had to make it seem like both of them ran. Marchello, being the passenger, and the driver ran. They were able to catch Marchello 2 blocks down, bring him back to the scene of the stopped vehicle, and have the other two, the two guys that jumped out that were at first suspects, but then because they said we were robbed, they became the victims. Had them ID them, and then that was it. Okay, so we'll convene later. This is going to take forever to upload. Maybe I can get a little better at reading. Girl, my eyes are hurting so bad. I had a long, hard day at work. So I already had a headache, my neck hurting, and then I went and helped after work, I have helped my cousin move. So I am not really feeling it now. I am legally blind, so that white on black reading that is very difficult, but I hope to get better at reading it. But that was the 3 testimonies of the 3 individuals, the 3 officers. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up here. Hiss your girl Cadillac. If you are seeing anything that doesn't make sense, that I'm just asking that Marchello be retried correctly without all of this different, changing anything. Don't change nothing. I ask that Marchello be tried correctly. He needs a new trial. Okay, so I have his petition in the description box. If you will, please take a look at his petition and sign it. And if you can, please share it. Share it with 5. If you're willing to share it, please share it with 5 people so that we can get this story going and go ahead and get him home. There's no way after this ordeal, he should have done 40 years. 40 years. All right, so here's your girl Cadillac. Thank you, guys.